All right, so let's do a little commercial break on dealing with writers and advance of shows and what to do when you have a venue, you're production manager for what you do there, or you're managing tech, and how to deal with people coming into your space. Because it's basically one big giant game of poker. It really is. And although I honestly don't have like a ton of experience, just getting to do it with a lot of acts lately, I've just seen how it's a very big people game. It's a lot of negotiations. You have to kind of know all of the equipment, and and all the jargon that goes with it. And so literally sometimes on the call with the production manager, like I'm Googling stuff as they say it to know what they're talking about. And so never be ashamed to figure that out. But anyway, so right now, this is a stage plot of a band we're gonna be working with next week called Coin. And it's part of a show where we're gonna have 3 bands coming in, and it's gonna be very quick turnarounds. And so we have to have our crap together to make sure we know what every band wants. Do they want in-ears? Do they have wedges? And so thankfully, most of them send this thing called a rider, which is basically a big giant PDF that says, hi, we're this band, we're gonna be traveling with this equipment, we like this mic, or we have nothing. You're supposed to provide everything for us, including brown M&Ms. And so, so what gets tricky is a lot of writers have production requests as well as hospitality requests. So you have to know, what am I responsible for? And so since we are a production company, like we don't say, here's your green room, sir, with the cucumber, melon water you would like. We usually, like, we're on stage making sure you have the right microphones, that kind of thing. And so if they answer those questions, I'm usually like, who is the show promoter? Who is the house? Who is supposed to be taking care of them? But usually a lot of information ends up in the writer and may have just got sent to you, not them. So you may be responsible for helping out your promoter with what they're wanting. So this is one page out of the writer that has a stage plot. Again, this is handy. We just looked at earlier, what does it look like to set up a whole room? So this is a microcosm of that. Like, what does the band want on stage? So it has their names, it has where they want power, where the drum kit's going, the bass amp, all that stuff. And so this is super handy. And they also have an input list below. And again, our industry is full of jargon. And it says 1, assuming channel 1, 52 on kick. So what's a 52? Well, that's, a beta 52 from Shure. So you have to know that, okay, that's some shorthand. Or a 57, you have to know that is a Shure SM57. And so you have to be able to read shorthand. And they're giving you inputs, which is great. And there's also a little side note. They happen to have a tombstone that's 7 feet tall that will take up half the stage. So good luck. For us, having a smaller stage on this show was also 3 bands trying to fit their stuff on it. And so we're like, well, okay, so this is the headliner, so they're playing last, but that also means they're gonna sound check first, because we're gonna get them good to go, load on the other band, and then the opener. So that way their gear is set, and then we just peel it off in reverse. But wait a minute. This headliner wants a very specific console for their front of house guy and tour manager to mix on. We don't have one in our inventory, so they're like, we really want it, so we rented one. But wait, the second band said, hey, we're actually bringing our own console. We really want to use it. And those 2 consoles don't talk over the same digital protocol we used to use as our Snake. And so like, well, okay, so we have to get 2 separate stage boxes to get signal to 2 different consoles. But wait a minute, the first band wants to mix their own ears with their own console. And I know all this stuff from reviewing all 3 of their writers. And it's like, well, our job is to make sure all 3 of their workflows can kind of come together under our roof and make it smooth. And so questions I might be asking them, I have kind of my own notes. Let's see, yeah, so I made a little document. So this section, the questions for all the bands, like these are like our 4 big ticket items when I have a call with the production manager is, here's what we got. That okay. So here's in-house. So with poker, you're holding your cards close, and honestly, money's on the line. Because the thing is, if you have to rent something else, that's money out of your pocket versus like, you just use our console, bro. But they're like, no, we want this console. Okay, well, we're not the in-house provider. This isn't our budget. This is a promoter's budget. And so that means we have to go back to our friend and be like, hey, we need more money for this band. Like, well, aren't you a legit production company and don't you all have the right gear? I'm like, well, there's like 50,000 consoles out there. He doesn't know that. And so it's one big giant kind of political game to some degree, asking for some equipment. So if you go with the mindset and talking to this production guy, if he says, I want this console, you go, sir, yes, sir, we'll find it. And then you're just gonna run out of money like that if you try to bring everything in. And so a great way to start the conversation is start like, I'm a professional, we have good gear that will get the job done, have that in your brain, we can make this happen. So you say, here's what we have. Say it clearly, say we take good care of it, we will have it ready for you, we're here to support you, we want to make this show happen. Just like extend the olive branch. And they may go, oh yeah, that's fine, I can mix one of those. Or they may be diva and put their foot down like, no, I have to have this $50,000 console. And then that's when we have to start negotiations. And most of the time, if you treat them with respect, you show them the inventory you have, be punctual, follow up, like they'll usually be willing to work with you. Because almost no writer is ever fully fulfilled. Very seldom does every single thing get met in what they ask. Because the thing is, they honestly will ask for the moon. And you are constantly in a state of disappointment when having to deal with these people. Like, we don't have this, going to do that. So it's like, okay, cool. So just like we saw earlier, we said the kick drum mic, you know, said it was a 52. We're like, well, I have a Heil PR48. And the guy like, yeah, I like Heil, just fine. But the thing is, they have to choose something, because they just said, yeah, whatever you got to every venue. Then they're gonna be like, well, we have, you know, a broken 58 and, you know, a Imp 2 that, you know, the ground lift doesn't work. So it's the whole time. And so you have to come in with like, this is what we need, but you must start the conversation with, this is what we got, let's make it happen. And so the thing is, if I say, here's what I have, and then see what doesn't line up, then it's basically, what else do you need? So just like, what is missing here? If they have a few non-negotiables, that's when you go to your promoter, whoever else is finding the gear, and make it happen. Borrow, beg, or steal, one of the three. Number 2 is usually what happens. And so, and then backline. So backlining is originally coined. The band wasn't going to travel with any of their instruments, but now they are. But if someone has a fly date, it's really hard to fit, you know, Neil Peart's drum set on a on a plane. And so if someone's traveling with a bunch of gear, that's hard. So they just source it locally, and that's usually the production company's job to go find it, bring it together, and have it. So not only are you providing PA, cables, microphones, you're providing instruments. So there are companies, usually based out of Nashville, they're just like instruments, you know, you walk down the street, like here's a paper bag, here's a Telecaster, like they're just everywhere. And so in charge of getting instruments there too. And so good backline companies have a wide array of instruments of your standard stuff that's kept in good shape. Guitars show it with new strings on it. Amps have good tubes in it, so making sure that's the case. So it's always good to test your backline gear before you put it in an artist's hands, you know, because you don't want, or like, you know, if an active guitar, you want to make sure there's a new battery in it. Because I mean, you don't want some solo act who's just been on a plane for 6 hours having to get rushed to the venue and his first drum of his guitar is it's no fun. So making sure you have your own production company's gear, but if you're backlining it, you got to trust that's good gear to begin with and make sure it is, then put it into people's hands. So backline, we're not backlining any instruments or amps or anything for the show. They're all bringing it. So I go, check, no backline, yes. Because the thing is, if you don't own it, that's an immediate expense, like I'm going to pay for it from somebody else. And also, here's our crew. Will that work? Some bands travel with their own sound guy. A lot of times the front of house guy doubles as the tour manager. So he's usually the one like, I need this green room, I need these. He's kind of calling and advocating for the band, and then he's mixing front of house. Very common thing. And so the crew on this show that we're going to be doing is going to be 2 audio techs and a LD. So I will be A2, which that means I'm basically patch guy. And so between the 3 acts, we're having 3 different snakes, but also shifting around instruments. So I'm making sure, like, okay, this vocal mic was for the opener, take it off stage for the second guy, put on some stuff, and then for the 3rd act, bring it back out, put it back in their snake. So I'm making sure all that gets done for all inputs. Then also, on the 2nd act, they have a front of house guy, but they don't have a monitor engineer, but they want one. So I will become the monitor engineer for the 2nd act. But all 3 acts do have their front of house guy. So the guy we had, or A1, that was going to be there, he's not mixing any bands, but he will be there to help me patch, be a systems tech, make sure all that goes. So we kind of have to float in Audio World and meet any needs depending on what they have in their crew or don't. Some bands don't travel and they're like, hey, here's our console, good luck. Hey, like some bands are literally helpless. Like we don't have backline, we don't have microphones, we don't have an audio guy. Here's a really complicated writer, and they show up and you just have to make it happen. And so a lot of tours will also have like a tour manager as well as a production manager. And so making sure the right and left-hander about talking, because some guy may be on another tour, then just hopping on this one as tour manager while the production guy's been doing planning and making sure all that happens. So you have to make sure everyone has all of that information. So we use a tool like Basecamp. We don't have our clients on here, but we know what's going on while it's going like that. So these are just some questions and notes I took from talking with each of the bands, Joan, Arizona, and Coin. And so a big win for Coin, don't need backline, yay. That was a lot of money back in our budget. But I know Coin, he's actually bringing an external delay unit. He's using external effects, not digital effects. So I need to make sure I have cabling for him and a place to put it and a good power supply to him, because it's like an old analog delay and it's really finicky about power. So make sure. So it's all these like little tiny details about each band's particular setup. You have to make sure everyone's happy and satisfied after negotiating for the show to go well. And then as well as like, where do we park? Where's the load-in door? What time do we sound check? What time do we go on tonight? Those are all production kind of hospitality things, but mostly production handled. But if they're outside the building in the hotel, it's usually off your plate. And so you can tell them where their closest coffee shop is and be a bro, but you don't have to like hold their hand to their room. And so anyway, so riders are your friend. That's just the common nomenclature is, hey, do you have a rider? That's the stuff they're kind of telling you. Input list, where do we want on, what gear do we have, what crew do we need, who's on stage? Those are the kind of questions we're asking. But then ahead of time, I'm planning, okay, with all these 3 different acts in our system, how do we make everyone happy and have a good show? So that's kind of the thought process that goes through there with looking at writers, working with bands, and making your gear work. That's it.